Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine pouring 30 years of your life into something, dedicating everything, believing deeply in a promise made to you, only for it to be snatched away, like in an instant.
Yeah.
What would you do? Our deep dive today plunges into a truly captivating story of loyalty, um, shocking betrayal, and a very, very spicy act of revenge.
Mm-hmm.
All is reported in excerpts from Kimchi Heiress Reborn, a daughter-in-law's spicy revenge.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is how a seemingly personal family drama escalates. It has incredibly high stakes,
Right.
touching on complex business succession, broken trust, and, some surprising legal implications, too.
Definitely.
So our mission really is to extract the core insights from this account. So you can understand not just what happened to this individual A, but why it matters.
Yeah, in the bigger picture.
Exactly. In the broader context of personal and professional commitments and maybe the hidden pitfalls of these unwritten agreements.
So let's set the scene then. We're talking about a 50-year-old woman, referred to as A, married for 3 decades.
30 years.
And her in-laws, they aren't just running some small kitchen operation. They own a significant kimchi factory.
Yeah. Significant is the word. Dozens of employees supplying large supermarkets.
So this isn't just a side hustle. It's a serious, thriving business.
That's right. And initially there wasn't a clear heir. Not in the immediate family, anyway. A's husband worked for a public corporation, stable job. Her brother-in-law, he was a public official.
Also pretty secure, prestigious roles.
Right, so maybe they weren't available, or perhaps not willing to step into the demands of running the family business.
Which left the in-laws kind of lamenting, didn't it? That there was no one to take over the factory as they got older.
Exactly, and that's where A steps in.
Right. She started helping out just a few times, chipping in here and there.
Yeah, informally at first.
And that quickly led to a formal employment offer.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, this promise, this really significant promise, started to take root. Her in-laws would constantly tell her, and the quote is, "This factory will be yours."
Constantly. That's the key.
Now, initially, A, she just dismissed this, thought it was a joke, maybe a bit of a compliment,
Sure, you might wave it off at first.
But the longer she worked there, the more these repeated reassurances, well, they became less of a joke and more like something she genuinely believed about her future.
And that's striking, isn't it? The sheer accumulation of that belief over time. It wasn't just one offhand comment. It was repeated assurance that really shaped her perception of her future, her role. It became the foundation for everything she did for decades.
And what a role it became. The story details her, well, extraordinary dedication. For 30 years, never late once.
Never late. I mean, that's almost unbelievable dedication.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Especially now. Her commitment as a daughter-in-law was so deep that she'd even go to the factory during meals if someone was absent.
Putting the business absolutely first.
Yeah.
And her devotion wasn't just about showing up. It extended to pretty significant financial sacrifices, too.
How so?
Well, we learned she accepted salary cuts when times were tough for the factory.
Wow. Okay.
Which shows this deep personal investment, right? She's clearly prioritizing the factory's well-being over her own immediate financial gain.
That speaks volumes. It's a level of commitment most businesses only dream of.
From anyone, let alone family.
Absolutely. And her in-laws, they definitely recognized this dedication. Eventually, they entrusted her with the overall management of the factory.
So she was running the show, handling everything.
Pretty much. So she's dedicated 3 decades, built this future brick by brick in her mind. Her sense of security must have felt absolute.
You'd think so.
And that's exactly what makes the next part, well, just so utterly shocking.
It makes the next turn just incredibly jarring. A gets summoned late one night to her in-laws' home.
Which already feels off, right? Late night summons.
Yeah, suggests urgency, something unusual. And there, she finds her brother-in-law.
Okay.
Now, this wasn't just any family gathering. This brother-in-law had recently been kicked out of his own home, penniless, and forced to resign from his public job because of an infidelity issue. A scandal, essentially.
So a person in a really vulnerable, compromised position, the atmosphere must have been incredibly tense already.
You can only imagine. And then the bombshell drops.
Yeah.
Her in-laws, just like that, without warning, announced they'd now be passing the kimchi factory.
The one they promised her.
The very one. Promised for 3 decades. They're passing it to this brother-in-law.
Oh my God. The whiplash. Can you even process that?
And the audacity of it all is just compounded by what the brother-in-law then says to A.
What did he say?
He actually told her, "You'll be employed for life, so you don't have to worry about being fired."
Employed for life. As if that was the point.
It's a complete invalidation. Of her 30 years, her belief in the promise, her whole identity in that business just wiped away.
And her husband's reaction? Was he furious? Did he defend her?
Not exactly a fierce defense, no. According to the account, he simply said, "If Big Brother inherits it, there's nothing we can do."
Nothing we can do. After 30 years of his wife's life poured into it.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you even do in that moment? The person who should be your staunchest ally just gives up.
It's not just a business problem at that point. It's a fundamental breakdown of trust on multiple levels.
Absolutely.
It's a prime example, really, of how family dynamics, especially when money and power are involved, can just utterly override these long-standing personal promises.
She built her entire life around this promise.
And suddenly, the goalposts aren't just moved, they're obliterated. Gone.
So her immediate reaction?
Understandably, sheer fury, she left the factory right after that confrontation, walked out.
Good for her, but she didn't just walk away and stew in her anger, did she?
No, she walked straight into decisive action, channeled that fury directly into, well, entrepreneurial defiance.
Okay.
She opened her own small kimchi shop.
Her own shop. But here's the twist, right? This is where the spicy revenge really kicks in.
Exactly. It wasn't a solitary venture for long. The story reports that some of her former factory colleagues,
Ones who worked with her.
yes, witnessing her unjust treatment, knowing her expertise, they expressed a strong desire to work with her in her new shop.
It's huge.
And even more strikingly, some of the original factory
The
clients.
supermarkets. Or other buyers.
The clients who knew A's quality, her dedication firsthand, they moved their business to her new shop.
Wow. That is a powerful, market-driven vote of confidence in her.
And a direct hit to the factory that betrayed her.
Ouch. So the fallout must have been intense.
Oh, predictably. The in-laws were furious. They accused A of being an industrial spy.
Seriously. An industrial spy.
And of stealing their recipes. It seems like they couldn't reconcile her success with their betrayal, so they just assigned blame.
Easier than admitting they were wrong, I guess.
Yeah.
And the husband, did he come around?
He continued to blame A, saying things like, "Does family have to go through this much conflict?"
Oh, come on. As if she caused the conflict.
Right. Not the victim of a broken 30-year promise. It's a classic case of deflecting responsibility back onto the injured party.
Unbelievable. So this brings us to the legal side of things. You mentioned implications.
Yes, this is where lawyer Park Ji-hoon's perspective comes in, and it clarifies quite a bit.
Okay.
He explained that while the in-laws might throw around accusations like stealing recipes or clients, it's not that clear-cut legally. He mentioned, and I'm quoting loosely here, that legal responsibility cannot be completely excluded in technical aspects.
What does that mean, technical aspect?
Well, because these were former colleagues who chose to leave and clients who chose to follow A, it's less about direct theft.
And more about legitimate business competition.
Exactly. Essentially, the burden of proof would be on the original factory. They'd have to prove specific trade secret theft or illegal solicitation.
Which sounds like a very high bar.
Especially if, as is likely, A didn't have any kind of formal non-compete agreement in place.
Right. Why would she? She thought she was inheriting the place.
Precisely. So it really highlights the difference between, say, a moral grievance feeling wronged and something legally enforceable.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for someone listening, maybe navigating their own complex relationships or potential promises?
Well, it starkly highlights the, I guess, surprising fragility of unwritten agreements, even ones backed by decades of loyalty, decades of mutual understanding.
Yeah, that 30 years of belief just vanished.
The core insight here is that perilous gap between what we feel is owed morally based on trust and history and what formal legal structures actually protect.
She built her life on that verbal promise.
But in the eyes of the law, that huge investment, 30 years, it was unwritten, it left her incredibly vulnerable when things changed.
It really exposes how relying just on family trust without formalizing things, especially in business succession,
can lead to absolutely catastrophic personal and financial loss. It underscores that delicate balance, doesn't it, between trust, expectations, and the very real, tangible implications when they're broken, especially when your business, your livelihood is on the line.
So we've journeyed through 30 years of dedication, a profound promise, a truly shocking betrayal, and then this determined act of entrepreneurial defiance.
Yeah.
This deep dive into A's story gives us so much to consider about how family, business, and personal commitment all get tangled up.
It really does. And it makes you think hard about the weight we give to unwritten agreements versus, the cold, hard reality of legal structures.
Definitely. So thinking about A's journey and that legal perspective from the lawyer,
Hmm.
what would you weigh more heavily if you found yourself in a similar situation?
Would it be the decades of loyalty in those verbal promises, or the clear, sometimes harsh, reality of business succession and what's legally enforceable? How much should family ties really dictate business decisions, And at what point does a personal slight demand, not just personal action, but maybe even legal dispute,